Essential oils are no stranger to this podcast, this community, and probably to you. But in case you need a reminder of how much they can do and how they actually work, I brought in a Flipping 50 podcast favorite to talk about essential oils. She actually has her own line, but more importantly, she has a new book that I think could not be more timely at this point where you and I are looking at about 12 months into pivot, pivot, pivot. So it became clear about a year ago right now that the pandemic was no rumor. It was about to become our reality of closures, opening, partial opening, masks, vaccines, and politics. It was a year, to say the least. And whether you feel it and you're fully acknowledging it, or you don't necessarily feel it, but you're pretty sure that you couldn't have gotten through this year in this society fully functioning without some level of stress in your life. And many of you have experienced extraordinary stress because of complicating circumstances. We're going to talk about all of that here, dive into the effects of stress and where essential oils come in, helping your body function better. So we'll go through some vocabulary words, define the way your body actually works and or works against you if you're not on the right path. Before I dive in, I want to make sure that you're aware. We recorded this episode during a pandemic. Jody from her home, me from mine. And it is far from perfect. Both of us have pets. It was hers that puts a little barking fit right into the middle. So if you can hold on and listen for about a minute, the barking stops. So just wanted to let you know that in advance. And I think Jody speaks clear enough that she can talk right over it, as mothers do when their children are acting up and talking. She just kept on going. But I would like to let you know in advance that might seem a little irritating or frustrating. It does end. And there was no way that we could clean that up in the post-production. So there you have it. Last but not least, just to let you know, this episode is brought to you by the Flipping 50 Advanced Specialist, the Advanced Fitness Specialist 2.0. And if you are a trainer or a health coach, or you'd like to be, now's the time to learn more about it. We currently have a group already in the middle of a 10-month branding and influencing and building your business program as they learn hormone balancing strategies for their clients. And if you'd like to learn more about how to be a part of the next group, I'll put the link in the show notes. I'm Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top questions and struggles, and I share what to eat, how to move, and how to change your mindset so you can have the energy and the vitality that you want, need, and deserve.
My guest is Jody Sternov Cohen, and she's a best-selling author, award-winning journalist, functional practitioner, and founder of Vibrant Blue Oils, where she's combined her training in nutritional therapy and aromatherapy to create unique proprietary blends of organic and wild-crafted essential oils. And by the way, Jody is no stranger to the Flipping 50 podcast, so I will link to her previous episode with us here in the show notes. She's helped over 50,000 clients heal from brain-related challenges, including anxiety, insomnia, and autoimmunity. Does it sound like I just described 2020? For the past 10 years, she's lectured at wellness centers, conferences, and corporations on brain health, essential oils, stress, and detoxification. She's been seen on the New York Times, Wellness Mama, Elephant Journal, and numerous publications. Her website, vibrantblueoils.com, is visited by over 300,000 natural health seekers every year, and she's rapidly become a top resource for essential oils education on the internet today. Welcome, Jody. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh my God, it's fabulous to be among. I'm 52 now, so I'm
You're one of us.
Flipping. Yes.
Yeah, well, we don't change the language because it's a family show, but still flipping. Okay. All right, let's refresh everybody's memory. First of all, because knowing the why, why this? Why essential oils? What was your reason for even starting or diving into it?
I think necessity is the mother of invention. Basically, during kind of a rock bottom moment, my ex-husband was severely depressed, and I was worried he was going to die on my watch. So my friends basically had an intervention, and we moved him to a residential treatment facility. And once I knew that he was safe and it wasn't my job to keep him alive, I collapsed. My adrenals had probably been running a 10-year marathon, and I suddenly could barely get out of bed, which was very inconvenient because my kids were 5 and 7. I had a full-time job. I was a full-time, class parent, room mother, volunteer. And I would wake up with them. My 5-year-old was, a little alarm clock who would come wake me up at 5:30. And I would make them breakfast, pack their lunch, check their homework, drive them to school, come back, get into bed, set the alarm for 10 minutes before I had to pick them up. And that was basically all I could do, and I had been practicing nutrition. I knew it was my adrenals. I was taking all the supplements that were supposed to help, but nothing was helping. And I even tried pharmaceutical drugs, which didn't really help. And I was getting to the point where I was really, getting worried. And a friend pointed out, you have been so stressed for so long. Cortisol causes gut inflammation. I bet your gut is toast. You should look at, topically applying remedies. Sorry, that's my dog. We know that.
That's okay.
We know that hormonal creams and nicotine patches get into the skin. Anything you put in your skin gets into your system in 20 minutes. So why don't, she was going to give me a thank you gift of essential oils. She brought by a big box, and I was like, I'll try anything. I'm game for anything. So I tested the box, using kind of the technique I use in my practice, and found 5 oils that worked. I combined them into a blend, put them on my low back, and for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. I was like, okay, I can try this. Hang on, let me just, my dog is going a little bananas. I just want to make sure everything is okay. So I'm like, okay, I'm in. That works. I'm in it. Oh, shoot. Right. I'm in. I'm going to keep doing this. And that's kind of how I got started. And then once I felt better, I started doing research and trying to figure out, how did that work so well? What did I do right? And it turned out that oils actually are fabulous for all of the things that I was looking to improve, for mood, for energy, and the fact that you can smell them and they get into your system so quickly. It occurred to me, oh my goodness, why is no one really doing this? This seems like such an obvious, easy way to help yourself, especially, sometimes if you take too many supplements, it can make you feel a little nauseous. We all know we're supposed to eat kale, but sometimes it's hard to stomach that. So it just kind of opened the door. And once I started researching and diving deeper, I kept finding more and more information that really supported using oils in kind of a medicinal capacity.
So an amazing story. You've walked the talk. You've been there, felt it. And, I have to look at this. I used this word before we started recording, but, the synchronicity or serendipity, and I'll be honest, I mixed those two words up, but I think you may have both right now with this new book you've got. As we're, talking, we're about 12 months into some pretty stressful times for a lot of people.
Yeah.
A roller coaster ride, if you will. And, yes, I I hate to be one of those people who are constantly saying how terrible it's been, because there have been some things, I think, for all of us, we've realized what our priorities are, what's really important. But, I mean, there's probably not a better time to be talking about, what's happened with stress to us and what it feels like, and maybe what it feels like when we're not identifying even the fact we're having it or we're in it. So let's talk about this. You've been on before, and we dove in quite heavily to parasympathetic state, but I think it's worth reviewing and talking about those words. Having you share the title of your new book, too, will make sure we do that. But let's talk about first stress and parasympathetic state, sympathetic state. Do you want to just define those first before we go any deeper?
Yeah. So your autonomic nervous system controls your automatic functions. So your breathing, your heart rate, your digestion, your detoxification, your ability to calm inflammation and turn on your immune system. And, it's really designed to keep you alive. And it allocates resources differently depending on if there's danger that's presenting, either physical danger, like an animal that might be chasing you, or a car that might be changing lanes and doesn't see you, or any kind of anticipatory stress and mental thought form danger, like a fear that your finances, that you might lose your job, that you might not be able to pay for things, that a relationship might end, that you, are worried about your health. Any of those concerns trigger kind of the same chemical cascade. So when you sense danger, the sympathetic branch of your nervous system kicks into high gear, and that's known as your fight or flight system. So basically, resources like blood flow are allocated towards your arms and your legs so that you can run faster and flee. And anything that's not critical to immediate survival, like your ability to reproduce, have a rational conversation, digest your food, detoxify, turn on your immune system, they're put on pause. And then ideally what happens is the danger passes, the car doesn't hit you, you continue driving, you park somewhere, you're safe, and your nervous system switches gears and shifts into that parasympathetic rest, digest, heal, recover state, and then the cleanup occurs. Back when we used to be able to entertain in person, you'd have a big party, all the guests would leave, and you'd clean up the house and take out the garbage, right? So ideally, you're supposed to kind of land in that parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. And what's been happening is that we're so stuck in this anticipatory stress and uncertainty that we're kind of in that fight or flight state all the time. So anything that we can do, in the way that might present, you might feel anxious, you might feel overwhelmed. It might be really hard to focus, or, like my mother was telling me, no one in their book club read their book because it was just too hard to concentrate.
Gosh.
Yeah. You could feel like your heart is racing. It could impact your appetite. Like maybe you're craving food you don't normally eat, or you just have no appetite, or you have no desire to make food because you're just so bored of everything you've been making on high rotation. It can present as a lot of things, but basically anything that you can do to kind of manually override, you're stuck in the sympathetic state and shift yourself into parasympathetic state will start to turn on that kind of recovery. It basically tells your body you're safe. And when you're safe, you don't need to feel anxious. Your pupils actually dilate. The black part of your eyes get really big when your sympathetic nervous system is dominant, because that lets in more light. It lets you kind of see better to make that next strategic decision. But it also shuts down a lot of possibilities, because if you're, pondering your navel when a tiger is about to eat you, you're going to die. You have to really only focus on those immediate survival instincts. So say, for example, you're looking to have kind of a important conversation with someone in your life. If their pupils, the black part of their eyes, are really big, they are in that fight or flight state. They are not going to be able to hear you. Like when our kids were little, preschool teacher used to say, connect before you correct. My son Max would throw sand on the playground, and instead of yelling at him in the sandbox, I'd scoop him up, walk him over to a different part of the playground, sit him down, kind of connect and say like, hey, let's just have a moment. And then look at his eyes and make sure that the pupils were small. And then I would say like, that's not okay behavior. We're going to have to go home. If you can't show up appropriately, can't stay, kind of thing. But the point is that you need to find a way to switch into the parasympathetic state. And physiologically, I'm going to explain how you do that and how you can use oils. So the on-off switch, think of it as your gear shift on your bike between sympathetic fight and flight and parasympathetic rest and digest is your vagus nerve. It's cranial nerve number 10. It's the longest nerve in the body, and it's really what connects the brain to the gut. When people talk about the gut-brain axis, the bidirectional signals from the brain to the body and then back up from the body to the brain, that is your vagus nerve. And it basically starts at the back of the head, splits, divides, and wraps around both sides of the neck, kind of right behind your earlobe. If you feel right behind your earlobe, feel that bone, that's your mastoid bone. And that's where the vagus nerve is the most accessible to the surface. It's also the thickest there. So I'm sharing this because it's a great access point. In fact, there is a neuroscientist out of New York. His name is Dr. Kevin Tracy. And he started noticing, they started doing electrical implants, kind of like a pacemaker-like device right there behind the earlobe on the mastoid bone to stimulate the vagus nerve to turn on the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. And they had phenomenal results with calming inflammation, anxiety. In fact, this device has been approved by the FDA for both epilepsy and depression. You can also, anywhere that the nerve kind of travels in the body, like the heart, the lungs, the gut, the gallbladder, you can, the mouth and the throat, like you can hum, you can gargle, you can gag yourself, you can engage in breathing exercises. Those of us that are athletes, you always feel better at the end of the workout than you do at the beginning. That's because through breathing, you've activated the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. But what I found was that compliance was really low. I was trying to explain to people, like, you need to activate the parasympathetic branch. And they'd be like, yeah. In the next appointment, okay, did you do like box breathing, deep breathing? Oh, yeah, I forgot. But when I made it really easy, like you're just going to take this small drop of this stimulatory blend of essential oils and just dab it behind their ear. And suddenly, especially anyone that had any kind of digestive dysfunction, because what most people don't realize is that digestion starts in the brain. It's the vagus nerve triggering like the saliva in the mouth to start to break down the nutrients, especially the protein, the hydrochloric acid in the stomach to kind of ramp up so that, again, the proteins are further broken down, the gallbladder to release bile, the pancreas to release digestive enzymes, and then that whole moving walkway that is the digestive cascade to kind of carry the food through the small intestine into the large intestine and then out into the toilet. So problems occur when it sits too long, right? You get small intestinal bacteria overgrowth or irritable bowel syndrome or constipation. So any of my clients that had any of those digestive ailments, also including, acid reflux, which kind of happens when there's not enough stomach acid, they start noticing, oh my God, I feel better. And it's funny because the minute something helps you feel better, that's the drug you never forget to take, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's in your purse. You're carrying it with you. So people, they realize it's a little bit like, going back to the bike example, if you're biking downhill and you're in high gear because, it lets you go faster and gives more tension on the pedals. And then suddenly I live in Seattle. We hit hills all the time. You really have to downshift to a lower gear or it's going to be a lot harder. If you can basically shift your nervous system into the right gear so that blood is flowing to your organs of digestion, so you're actually able to digest, absorb, and assimilate your nutrients, you're going to get a lot more value out of that meal.
Yeah, and I love that for every listener here, practically for every woman, even if she's not necessarily feeling that immediate result of, oh, I've got bloated gut or constipation or diarrhea. Often, I think the fatigue and just that lethargy, is a sign that, she's either got leaky gut, she's got gut issues. And I love this. So easy, right? So it's like, let's just do something that isn't hard to remember, that is actually so pleasant. There's nothing, no trick to it, no effort to it. So, question, your patients, your clients who were doing this, how long did it take before they began to feel better?
Some of them instantly. Like, honestly, my moms, they used to call it the poop oil. The kid would be constipated. They were so tired of Miralax. They're like, we would use it and boom, in the bathroom, we were good. So it turns it on really quickly. And that's the most amazing things. I think that oils get into your system faster than any other remedy. Like, we have a sleep oil that helps the pineal gland naturally release the sleep hormone melatonin. And the first time I took it, it wasn't right before bed. And I basically had to cancel plans and take a nap. Like, it just, I was ready to go to sleep. Yeah.
Wow. So good. So many listeners also are listening to that. So is that one of the special blends?
Yeah, that's our circadian rhythm blend. And basically what happens, especially to so many of, us women who are like juggling so many things, and we just have to keep all the plates spinning. It takes a lot of energy and mental energy to stay on top of it all. And so that requires kind of the energy hormone cortisol. And cortisol and the sleep hormone melatonin, they kind of work collaboratively together but cancel each other out. So ideally, you wake up in the morning and cortisol levels are high. And it's a bit like a teeter-totter. When cortisol is high, it forces melatonin low. So you have the energy to face the day. And then as the day wears on and it starts to get dark, your pineal gland is supposed to release melatonin in response to darkness, and that's supposed to kind of naturally force cortisol down. But for those overachievers out there who, are worried about their job, their family, their friends, all of this anticipatory stress when, they're thinking, that's kind of triggering the release of cortisol. And so it suppresses melatonin. So one way to balance that out is to kind of trigger the natural release of melatonin. So think of the teeter-totter again. If suddenly there's more weight on that end of the scale, it kind of forces cortisol levels to drop. And it's a really nice backdoor for anyone who gets anxiety at night, like before bed, their to-do list suddenly doesn't stop. I used to, that was me. I'd like keep a pad by my bedside table because I'd suddenly remember something that I couldn't forget, so I'd have to write it down so I could actually go to sleep.
Brain dump. Yeah. Okay. So let's just kind of piggyback off of that a little bit, because there are a lot of women who, and men too. So I don't think it's isolated, but, we walk into the room. It's like, I don't remember why I walked into the room all the little things, and we kind of laugh about it, and we kind of think, oh, it's just my age. But I don't really think that's true. And I do think that there's a lot to be said for, we do try to commit so much to memory. We try to just like jam it in. I'm going to remember that and this and the other thing. And, we kind of bring ourselves this overload of, how could we possibly remember all things? And so maybe the brain, is just dropping off some of the things that are not important or just didn't make it to the list because there's no more room. But talk about essential oils for supporting that kind of focus and memory and concentration.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually one area where I think essential oils really shine, because that's a lot of inflammation in the brain, and there's so many things that can, basically, it's if the garbage doesn't leave the brain, then the immune system turns on. We're all familiar that external pathogens or toxins can turn on the immune system. It can also be like metabolic waste that just doesn't leave the body. So there's a whole chapter in the book about this. And basically what happens is when you sleep, it's almost like your brain gets to go through the car wash. It's your lymphatic system in combination with your brain cells, glial cells in the brain, and it's called your glymphatic system. And it basically kind of goes and cleans out all of the debris, any pathogens, any toxins. And then the exit route for these toxins is down your neck, into the lymph system, then the blood, then the liver, gallbladder, gut, toilet. But at any point in this system, there can be congestion. Like think of sometimes there's a traffic accident a mile up the road, but it's backed up where you are because, the body is a hydraulic system. So any backup can congest things. And the most common space for the backup to occur is the neck. The neck is the big bottleneck because it has obviously your structure, your muscles, your nerves, including your vagus nerve, your lymph, your veins and vascular system. And there's actually, I'm really excited about this. There was some great research done by this Italian researcher, Dr. Marco Ruggiero, who, in addition to the book, I have like his whole PowerPoint presentation that he walks us through, but he did basically a sonogram of the neck and showed how the different tissue was kind of congested into one another. Like think of if you've ever been in the middle seat of an airplane, between two like NFL football players, it just you don't have any room for your arms on the armrest. So what he did is he used topically applied remedies of essential oils, like frankincense is a really good one, and it just helps to kind of mobilize fluid direction flowing. So all of a sudden that congestion and stagnation lifted and all of the, mechanisms in the neck could flow better. So what this translates to is it's a little bit like if the garbage trucks are on strike, right? While you're sleeping, so you need to sleep in order for the brain to shrink and the lymphatic system to turn on. And then it's trying to take the garbage out of the brain. And if the garbage collectors are on strike, if the neck is congested, it doesn't leave. So it gets a little reabsorbed, and then that triggers more of an immune response and more inflammation, which presents as brain fatigue, meaning like you get tired from things that you have to concentrate on, like driving for long periods or reading something that requires focus, or you walk into a room and you're like, wait a minute, what did I come here to get? Or you're trying to describe something like, it's like flannel that they wear in winter, or plaid that you wear in winter, and you can't think of the word flannel. That's all like subtle symptoms of brain inflammation. And so the more you can kind of turn off the root cause of the inflammation, and oils are really good because they can actually cross the blood-brain barrier, access the brain, and then put the brain back in balance. And it's, there's a lot of research on CBD oil and why CBD oil works. It's the particular chemical constituents that help to turn off inflammation, and essential oils have many of those same chemical constituents.
So interesting. Okay, so I want to come back, and I'm working on how to formulate my question here articulately, and I may just mess it up. So we're going to dive in. But most women will identify with what I'm about to say, that when I've got a woman and we're working, whether it's on a strength training program or we're doing, say, a high intensity interval training using boxing, probably 9 out of 10 women, or 9.5 of them, will tell me that we store tension in our neck. And, more than men. So I want to kind of go back to everything you just said, that like the neck is where it gets clogged up. So is this true for both men and women, but do you too see it occur more in women?
I think I think women carry a lot. It's like Atlas, right? They're carrying the world on their shoulders. And so part of that is physical, but part of that is also just mental and emotional, and allowing themselves to say no and have boundaries. and let go of things and get angry. We're taught to just make nice, just be polite. So someone's really, they call our baby ugly and we're supposed to just smile and be pleasant, because we don't know what to do with that anger. And that's another
hit
really
them.
nice
You
thing.
hit them. That's what you do. So
in your mind, you kick them. What's that?
Yeah. So something came to me, and I'm not a woo-woo person. I've had enough experience here to be dangerous. But as you were talking about, we carry the world and Atlas on our shoulders, and we don't necessarily respond with what we want to. Does that have to do with chakra too? Like we're at the throat chakra, we're kind of stifling it.
Yeah. And basically there's some really interesting research that like emotions have the word motion in them. They're designed to move through us. And when we kind of hold on to it, especially those feelings of anger, blame, shame, guilt, anger, we don't know what to do with it because we're supposed to be kind and polite. And how do you, communicate something in anger politely? It's complicated. So we do nothing and we just carry it. And what's great about oils and plants in general is that they can help you kind of gently release things so you don't need to carry it anymore. And when you don't need to carry it, then your shoulders can relax.
I love that. All right, Jody, I could probably talk to you for another 30 minutes and somebody could go for a very long walk if they're listening that way. But to wrap up, and we'll just tease the book. You'll just have to go and get the goodness in it. But if there was one more question that I should ask you, just to share something for those women listeners who've been now not just dealing with midlife and menopause and hormone fluctuations, but with the layer of pandemic on top of it, what question should I have asked you?
Yeah, I think it has to do with this idea of, so many of us that are organized like to control, like to make plans that makes us feel safe. So how do we kind of take control of ourselves and not need to feel so reactive or so responsive? Someone posts something on social media that just makes our blood boil and we want to say something angry back. And Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl has this great quote: between the stimulus and the response, there is a pause. And I guess what I want to say is that when you're able to activate your parasympathetic nervous system and feel safe, you have that moment of pause. You have that moment of someone sends a nasty email and you're not going to respond. Or maybe you type up the response, you don't send it, and you do take a long walk. And you just get to really feel safe, feel grounded, feel centered, and kind of choose how you react. So the world is crazy. There are very few things over which we have control, and yet we can always control how we choose to respond, and that gives us enormous power.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. I would love for you to relay to listeners, where can they learn more about the book?
So the best way, and we actually have a free gift that gives you 25 different strategies to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. If they go to boostthebrainbook.com/gift, you can get that free PDF. It's a free guide. And honestly, just pick one. I mean, my goal is like, I grew up with Baskin-Robbins. There were 31 flavors of ice cream, right? But most people have their favorite.
Right.
You don't need to do all 25. Like, just read it and pick one and try to integrate that in your life, and that will make a big difference.
So awesome. I love it. Love talking to you. We will definitely have you back, and hopefully we will be through this and on the other side talking about how well we dealt with it. Listeners, if you have a question that I didn't ask, you can leave that below the show notes today. It'll be at flipping50.com/blue oil. And what are you waiting for? Start flipping 50 today.